Welcome to the Arlington Street Church podcast. Founded in 1729, Arlington Street continues today as a gathering place for progressive people of faith in the greater Boston area and beyond. We are located at the corner of Arlington and Boylston Streets, across from the Public Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.
In an interview near the end of his life, English philosopher and writer Aldous Huxley was asked, "Dr. Huxley, you have studied all the great religious and spiritual traditions. Can you summarize for us what you feel you have learned?" He replied in one sentence, "I think just to be a bit kinder." So that could be the whole sermon. But we have a little more time, so I'll say a little more. Many years ago, I took the mandatory course for anyone who supervises Harvard graduate students. It was deadly boring. The classroom was full of giants, executive directors of some of our city's greatest nonprofits. And once a week for an entire semester, we all sat facing the front while this poor academic droned on and on at us for 2 unbroken hours at a time. But literally, in the final moments of the final class, the instructor said this: "Be sure you say a good goodbye." Just that, a mandate with no instructions. I knew just enough to know that he was onto something, and that I had no earthly idea what he was talking about. Perhaps, like you, throughout my life, people have left without warning, apparently vanishing into thin air. It shattered me every time. It had never occurred to me that it could go otherwise. Over the past 5 months, with exquisite tenderness, you have forced me to listen to you tell me not just that you know that I love you, but that you love me. And that after I'm gone, you will continue to love one another and to carry on what we have created here together. Your unflinching embrace of grief and courage, your generosity and generosity of spirit have taught me how to say a good goodbye. I was supposed to teach you, but you taught me. Thank you. No crying. In the late 1980s, I was invited to attend New Mexico's Gathering of the Tribes, not on my own merit, but because my daughter Jamie, then an infant, is native South American Inca. On a beautiful summer day, we sat in a huge circle in the shade of a grove of cottonwood trees. A Hopi elder stood in the center and began his address. "We Hopi, the most ancient people." There tends to be disagreement among the tribes about who really deserves this distinction. They are all ancient. But no one contradicted him. They had conceded. And I thought of this recently at a gathering of ministers when I referred to you as the most extraordinary congregation in the Unitarian Universalist Association, or perhaps anywhere. My colleagues laughed, but no one contradicted me. And with that distinction so well deserved, like the Hopi, Arlington Street enjoys both honor and responsibility. The responsibility, as you know so well, is to continue to deepen our practice of prophetic hospitality, welcoming all people of good heart. By this mission, we live and flourish, gathered in love and service for justice and peace. I want to say a little something about flourishing. Flourishing is paying attention, showing up for our lives with openness, curiosity, creativity. It's living with purpose and meaning and caring about something bigger than what's in the mirror. We can build the flourishing muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it gets. And the superhighway to flourishing is a spiritual practice of giving service and giving thanks. Fred Johnson is a singer who has toured the world with jazz legends Miles Davis and Chick Corea. Perhaps incongruously, he has also spent years studying the silent art of mime in the tradition of Marcel Marceau. Fred began his life as a ward of the state and spent the first 5 years and a half in and out of foster homes and orphanages. As a Marine, he was sent to Vietnam at the height of the war. The lethal brutality, he says, ignited his passion for life. The only way I could get myself back after the war was to serve others. This was my way of dealing with the measure of moral injury that I felt participating in the war. The greatest outcomes, he says, are forged in the fires of suffering. Fred was chosen by two masters of West African storytelling to be trained in their tradition of the traveling Jali, the person responsible for maintaining the oral history of a place as a medium of connection and healing. He says, they taught me how at any public gathering we can center the community through music and food, a coming together of our hearts and a totality of being. So that when we have conversations about what we should do together and how we move forward together, we are already in sensory alignment and an intentionality for the greater good. It is important for us to dream and imagine, aspire, and celebrate. To me, he continues, the art of living is to be present, so that we can really connect to the wholeness of what we have to offer each other, what we can be together, and how we can manifest in that way. We always have the capacity to connect in surprising and meaningful ways. At the heart of Fred Johnson's life is a commitment to live in joy, in heartache, and in wonder, and to continually open to blossom into the fullness of self and community. The essence of humanity, he says, is to awaken to our true selves and to our connectedness. Now more than ever, we have a tremendous opportunity to remind each other of the beauty of life and living. Each of us contains those seeds. Both individually and in community, we are called to tend our gifts and to flourish. Here's something else about flourishing. Until I enjoyed friendships with people from African nations, I might have thought this was a little bougie, but now I know that people with so many fewer resources live into this with far more exuberance than those of us in the developed world. Here it is. To flourish We need to put ourselves in the path of awe. Here's a story about that. I heard it from Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross, who are authors of Your Brain on Art. In the early 1950s, the polio virus was at an epidemic level. Summer outbreaks in the United States left tens of thousands, mostly children, paralyzed or dead. Second only to the atomic bomb, polio was the thing that Americans feared the most. At the University of Pittsburgh, Dr. Jonas Salk, a virologist, was working 16 hours a day in a cold, fluorescent-lit basement lab, hell-bent on a cure. He was exhausted, but it took everything in him to break away from his research and travel to Italy for a brief vacation. He walked the ancient hillside towns in Umbria, where the air was saturated with the herbal tang of olive trees, and made his way up to the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi. The massive 13th century stone monastery shone pink in the sunlight and white in the moonlight. Passing through the ancient oak doors, he left the heat of the day for the cool earthen musk of the chapel. The stone floor had been worn too shiny by the shoes of untold thousands of pilgrims. Above him, royal blue and terracotta red 14th century frescoes were set in vaulted arches. He felt, he said, in the presence of so much beauty, so much grandeur, that every sense was unleashed. Suddenly, the possibilities were endless. And Jonas Salk, awestruck, experienced the breakthrough that led to the life-saving polio vaccine. To flourish, we need to put ourselves in the path of awe. Now I'm thinking of Reverend Fred McFeely Rogers. Mr. Rogers, receiving an award from the Television Hall of Fame. It was 1999. I commend you to the film clip on YouTube. The presenter was Jeff Erlanger. Jeff, who uses an electric wheelchair, who had first appeared in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood at the age of 10, talking with Mr. Rogers about his recent surgery and how his wheelchair works and what you can do when you're sad. Together they sang, "It's You I Like." At the awards ceremony, Jeff, by then 29 years old, dressed in a tux, rolls onto center stage. Mr. Rogers leaps from his chair, his face flooded with surprise and joy, and hops right up onto the stage to embrace his friend. The camera pans across the audience, which is applauding thunderously, tears streaming down beautiful, open faces. And Jeff says, "You know, when you tell people that it's you I like, we know you really mean it. And tonight, I want to let you know, on behalf of millions of grown-ups and children, it's you I like." And then, in part, Mr. Rogers says this: fame is a 4-letter word, and like tape or Zoom or life or love, what ultimately matters is what we do with it. Life isn't cheap. It's the greatest mystery of any millennium, and we need to show and tell what good there is in life. But he says, how do we make goodness attractive? By doing whatever we can to bring courage to those whose lives move near our own. By treating our neighbor at least as well as we treat ourselves. and allowing that to inform everything. He continues, who in your life has been a servant to you? Who has helped you love the good that grows within you? In a medium that is all about image, sound, action, and that costs maybe $1,000 a minute, Mr. Rogers did something absolutely unheard of on television. Let's just take 10 seconds, he says, to think of some of those people who have loved us and wanted what was best for us in life. Those who have encouraged us to become who we are. Just 10 seconds of silence. I'll watch the time. Let's do it, all of us, right now. 10 seconds of gratitude. I'll watch the time. Mr. Rogers concludes, no matter where they are, either here or gone before us, imagine how pleased those people would be to know that you thought of them right now. Always, always remember that you are loved beyond measure. Someone asked if I were going to give you one last instruction. As if I'd been keeping something a secret or holding something in reserve all these years, saving it just for today. I wasn't, and I'm not. I've spent it as fast as I came to me, beginning and ending with that. You are loved beyond measure. But I'll remind you of this passage from Sue Monk Kidd's The Secret Life of Bees. August is a beekeeper, and she is teaching Lily, a teenager, about what she calls bee yard etiquette. Okay, in Lily's words, here it comes. She reminded me that the world was really one big bee yard, and the same rules work just fine in both places. Don't be afraid. No life-loving bee wants to sting you. Still, don't be an idiot. Wear long sleeves and long pants. Don't swat. Don't even think about swatting. If you feel angry, whistle. Anger agitates, while whistling melts a bee's temper. Act like you know what you're doing, even if you don't. And above all, send the bees love. Every little thing wants to be loved. Reverend Don Wells, my good colleague at Old South Church, United Church of Christ, sent me 3 pages of instructions about the 4 things I should say to you today. I laughed because when I read them, they are familiar from my training as a hospice chaplain. It has been an uphill battle for me to get away from Queen Cheryl's metaphor of the Last Supper with a really grim outcome for me. All joking aside, I will tell you what they are, not only because they are the hallmark of a good goodbye, I am doing my best, and in case it's not obvious, they're also true. Ready? Okay, wait a sec. For all the ways that I have fallen short, please forgive me. for any way in which you have fallen short. You might have fallen short. You are already forgiven. I love you. Thank you. And farewell. I carry with me your love. I leave you my love. Beloved spiritual companions, starting at about the age of 12, I had a recurring dream that I was on a beautiful island. And in my dream, everyone I loved was gathered there in one place. And in different iterations, my people would meet each other and they would love each other. When I told a friend about my dream, she said, "That's a dream about heaven, what heaven would be for you." In our years here together, my dream has come true. This is heaven. Thank you for our years together. Thank you for our good goodbye. May you, may we, may all beings fare well and flourish. Know that I will be cheering you on. I carry you in my heart. I will always love you. I will always love you. I will always love you. Amen. And now for our benediction, I invite you to put your hands over your heart in Namaste. I bow to the divine in you. American poet E.E. Cummings. With you, I leave a remembrance of miracles. Miracles are to come. Let us keep this faith, beloveds, and pass it on. The service begins when the service ends. Bless your hearts. I will always love you. Amen. I invite you to be seated for the choral benediction.
Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.